guys, welcome back to my fall reading update, which feels absolutely crazy to say because it's literally 110 degrees outside right now. So it definitely doesn't feel like fall, but whether it feels like it or not, fall is officially here. So the last time we chatted was June, and since then I have read 12 new books and I am officially 73% through my reading goal for this year. Looking through my list, I've pretty much only read horror or thriller books this season, so if you're looking for one to add to your TBR list, this is the place to be. And just a quick little tip, if you love to read new release books but don't have the money to be reading tons of new releases, utilize your local library. I think I've cracked the system. Maybe it's a little unethical, or maybe literally everyone also does this as well. But what I've been doing is that I'll head on to Libby and I'll request the book that I want to read next, the digital e-version. Usually the hold for this is a little bit longer than getting the physical copy, but that's not always the case. So usually what I will do is I will put a hold on the digital ebook version, and then I will head and put a request on the physical version from my library. It's definitely shortened the wait time on new releases for me because I have both of the versions to be able to use. Maybe literally everyone else is already doing that, but if you're looking to make your library work a little bit better for you, definitely try my little hack, request the digital version and the physical copy. It's been an especially helpful hack for people like me who truly don't care whether they're reading on their Kindle or whether they're reading a physical copy. And if maybe you feel that your library isn't tailoring to your needs, that's totally okay, because I feel that way about my library too. However, most libraries are a part of a library system where you have access to multiple libraries just through your one library card. I think with my library card, I actually have access to, I think, 20 libraries. So I can request a book from any of the libraries in that system and it'll get delivered to my local library. I know that is definitely not unique from my library, so definitely get on that train if you are not already using it. Actually, almost all of my books come from one specific library that is like an hour away from me, and apparently they must love having in new release horror and thrillers, because literally all of my books are coming from that one location. But let's finally start getting into the books that I have read since May, June-ish. So this summer I actually finished my favorite detective procedural book series, and that's the Gemma Woodstock series by Sarah Bailey. I've read the third book and the fourth book this summer. The third book is Where the Dead Go, and the fourth book is Body of Lies. I actually bought the first book really randomly from a used bookstore, and I've just been hooked ever since. These are books that I know that I will become addicted to within the first couple of chapters. They're big books, but that has literally never scared me away because I know that I'm going to get something incredible out of them every time I open it up. I'm actually really sad that there aren't any more because these are kind of like my comfort reads. And not like comfort rereads, like comfort reads as far as like, I need a good book, I'm gonna go read the next Gemma Woodstock book. But I don't have them anymore, and honestly that's like a really big bummer. This is a detective police procedural, so you know how it goes. Gemma Woodstock's the detective. She works predominantly on homicide cases. They fit the standard format of police procedurals, but I think what makes this series a bit better is that Gemma's a likable, unlikable character. You feel for her, you want her to do well, even though she is doing things that the general population would definitely not agree with. I think that a lot of authors just push way too far into the unlikable, and their characters are just someone that I could not like or care about what happens to them at all. But with Gemma, like, you feel for her, you want her to get better, you want things to work out for her, even if she is her own worst enemy. So the next book I read is Married by Nat Cassidy. It's a horror book, but it's really hard to place into its subgenre. At the beginning of the book, Mary starts going through menopause, loses her job, and is forced to go back to the town and the aunt that she absolutely wants nothing to do with. But not only is something wrong with Mary, something is wrong with literally everyone else around her. I don't know how to explain this book to you because it kind of goes off the rails a lot, but in a good way. I literally could not have predicted where this book was gonna go. I know that would normally be a really bad thing, but the choices and the direction that this author made and took work out really well. So if you're looking for something that's a little out there, a little different, definitely check out Married by Nat Cassidy. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and it was mostly my fault because I just was like devouring it, that I wasn't able to kind of sit with it and take it all in. So this is a book that you're gonna need to devote kind of a lot of attention to. I wouldn't say that this should be a quick read. This summer I had my husband Tyler choose my next read, and he chose Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So this book is hard to describe. It's hard to figure out where the line is with this book between what's a spoiler and what's not, so I'm gonna keep it very brief. This is a sci-fi thriller that dabbles in alternate realities. This book has become the book that I recommend to people who want to read more but just can't find a book they like. This book is so engaging within the first chapter that it is impossible to put down. This book was easy to finish and devour in a short period of time, almost in a way that feels like you don't have any other choice. This book is so good and gripping that it is impossible to put down, even for someone who isn't reading as many books a year as I am. Next book on the docket is First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. This book is about a woman who is essentially a spy. She is implanted into different lives until she gets the information she needs for her boss, and then she's taken out. But while on a case, she meets someone who is going by her actual identity. So this book is still technically a new release. It literally came out on January 2nd of 2024. It was also one of the book of the months, I believe. I didn't find it that way. It was trending on TikTok, and so I picked it up to give it a read. I really enjoyed this one. It was kind of your classic psychological thriller. In my experience with psychological thrillers, it's really hard for them to not only stay super engaging and compelling and fast-paced, but to also not step out of the realm of what is possible. The things that happen in this book make a lot of sense, and I can't say that about a lot of the psychological thrillers I read. I ended up giving this 4 stars, and my main critique of this book is that the ending moved by a little too quickly. You spend a lot of time with Evie in the beginning and through the middle of the book, and then the ending, all of the reveals, all of the answers, and the conclusion and climax of the story come within about 100 pages. And I wish that would have been stretched out a little bit because a lot happens in those pages. Again, in a way that makes sense, but I just wish it would have been stretched out just a bit more. Next up, I read The Deep by Nick Cutter. So in The Deep by Nick Cutter, the world is experiencing a plague that makes people forget who they are. At first, little by little, and then bigger things like how to breathe, how to think, and how their heart should beat. The main character is invited to the bottom of the ocean where his brother is working on a cure, but maybe this miracle cure isn't exactly what it seems to be. I would compare this book to Coraline and Resident Evil Biohazard. Those are 2 very, very different stories. But I think it's Coraline in the way that the evil in this book messes with the main character and kind of messes with reality, but in like a playful, messed up way. Similarly with Resident Evil Biohazard, not only is there like this contagion that is spreading, but the way that the things are described reminds me of something that would appear in a Resident Evil game. I gave this book a 4 star, and not necessarily because it was bad. I just think that I had overblown expectations about what this book would be because I knew it was by Nick Cutter. I read The Troop probably 2 years ago and I really enjoyed that book, and so I expected to also love this book. And I'm not sure what it was that made me not love it, because it was a good book and I would recommend this to someone who wants to get further into body horror, I guess. I don't know, I felt like it was missing something. If this would have had an author who wasn't Nick Cutter, I probably would have liked it more, but I just had certain expectations going into it because I had read The Troop that kind of made it a letdown for me. Now the next book I read was Brother by Anita Alborn. A member of a cannibalistic family wants out, but his family is not going to let him leave so easily. I really enjoyed this book. I actually just talked about this one in a different video of mine. I gave this one 4 stars. I think this is maybe the most messed up book that I've ever read. I don't think I've ever read a book where I read something and I just need to sit there for like a minute with my jaw dropped and just take in the information that I just read. This one goes places that I didn't think it was possible to go. You know what you're getting into, right? It's about cannibals. It's going to be messed up. But this gets messed up in just a very different way than what you would expect. The next book I read is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I gave this one 5 stars. I think this is my favorite Riley Sager book of all time. If you want to hear more, definitely check out the video that I dedicated to this one. The next book I read was The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This was my book of the month for July, and I kind of got it on a limb. It's a literary fiction, which I don't usually read a lot, but there is a disappearance mystery in this book that is kind of the reason that I decided to go out on a limb and give it a go. A camper goes missing while at a summer camp, the sister of someone who went missing at that same summer camp 10 years ago. This one, I think my main critique of it was just that there were a lot of POVs that it was kind of hard to keep track of. I think the author should have stuck to maybe like 3 or 4. I think there were at one point in this book 7 POVs that were going on, and I think that that was just a little bit too much. But I really, really enjoyed this book. I would actually compare it to Where the Crawdads Sing, where it is a literary fiction that is beautifully written and has a beautiful message, but there's also, in this case, the investigation into this disappearance going on. I think my favorite thing about this book is that it was beautiful. I thought that the messages, even though they were a little like messed up at some times, were beautiful in it, in a sad way. Beautifully sad is how I would describe this book. I'm really glad that I gave this book a read. It ended up being 5 stars for me, and I think I would recommend it to a ton of different people who are looking to look past its 400-page count. The next book I read is Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. In a small town, a woman goes missing. In just a few days, another woman and her daughter also go missing. But now it's about 10 years later and the daughter has come back. I thought my mom recommended this to me because she really liked this book, but after I finished, she just wanted someone else to talk about how bad it was. I don't think that it was bad. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't my cup of tea. I felt like the POVs in this were really messed up. I didn't enjoy two of the 3 POVs, right? And that's a good chunk of the POVs in this story. A couple other people on Goodreads had problems with its believability. I don't know if I had issues with that necessarily, but I definitely didn't think that it was written that well. Just not my cup of tea, I would say. Next book I read is Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. A never-finished cursed film gets popular online, and the main actor in it signs up for a reboot. I definitely wasn't expecting where this book ended up, and I don't want to give it away because it is technically a spoiler. So all I'm going to say is that this book is very Goosebumps-esque, I would argue. Definitely does not head down the path that I thought it would. I DNF'd Silver Nitrate this summer, and I kind of thought that this book was going to end up like that, but it definitely went in a very, very different direction. A direction that I really liked, but I know that it's not for everyone. And the last book I'm really excited to talk about, it's Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. This is actually the author who wrote Bird Box. This book is nothing like Bird Box. In fact, this book is terrifying. So terrifying that I had to have my husband in the room with me while I was reading it because it was so scary that I couldn't be alone. You know when you're a kid and you get up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and you are trying not to think about that one thing that scares you a lot because you're alone and it's the middle of the night and it's dark? This book is now what I try not to think about in the middle of the night because it was so scary that I had trouble going back to sleep. Incidents Around the House is about an 8-year-old girl who is being haunted by someone she calls the other mother. That name alone is scary enough, and this book only gets scarier. I cannot overemphasize how scary this book was. I felt like such a baby sitting there. My husband says he wishes that I could give it 6 stars. 5 stars for being such an incredible read, and an extra star for the experience that he got watching me read it. My only critique of this is that the ending was a little odd. If you've read it, you know. The beach scene on just doesn't make much sense to me. Seems like a very odd choice for some characters to take, but I think that the rest of the book was so good and terrifying that it still deserves a 5-star rating. Let me know if you'd like to see a full review on this because I have been telling absolutely everyone and anyone I know about this book. Officially the scariest book I've ever read. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this probably sounded like a lot of rambling. My summer feels like it was forever ago, even though it is still summer, right? It's still technically August when I'm filming this, but I've just had so many different experiences and life events happen this summer that I feel like it's been a year. Let me know what I should add to my TBR list for the fall and the winter, and I will see you guys next time.